Hey guys, it's Kathleen, and today I actually wanted to do a discussion video response in response to a video made by Ariel Bissett where she talked about whether booktubers need English degrees. Just like she said in the video, she talked a lot about how obviously the answer is no. You don't need an English degree to do booktube or to talk about books on the internet. And I think that's given, but like she said, I want to explore this topic a bit more and why this is an attitude, especially as somebody who does not have an English degree, whereas I know Ariel does. So the first point I want to quickly make and clear up is that oftentimes when people say this, they are not talking about commercial fiction. Nobody is saying that if you enjoy commercial fiction, you can't talk about it on the internet. No one's saying that if you read a Joe Picoult book, then you can't talk about it, or you read a Victoria Schwab book, that you shouldn't have an opinion on it just because you don't have an English degree. Generally, that's not what people mean. Obviously, that doesn't matter. You don't really need a degree to analyze those things anyway. Although, of course, you can analyze those books, they're not really made to be that way, so you don't need a degree to talk about them. What people really mean, in my opinion, when they say you need an English degree to talk about books is they mean classics or literature that's historically deemed important. And so then it comes down to the deeper question of why anybody actually thinks that you need an English degree to do those things. I'm gonna propose something that might be slightly unpopular, I'm not totally sure, but I'm gonna suggest that essentially it is not entirely ridiculous to say that if somebody wants to do academic level analysis of work, then yeah, it makes sense to be trained in that subject. If I go out there and I try to get a job as a journalist, then someone's probably gonna have expected me to study journalism, or they're gonna expect me to have some kind of prior job experience in it so I can be qualified for the job. But the reason this isn't really the same on BookTube is because we're not professionals and we don't claim to be. I don't think anybody clicks on a book review of a classic necessarily expecting an academic analysis suitable for, I don't know, a fourth year English honors student. For the most part, when I click on a video about a classic, I want people to tell me why it's relevant to me still and why I should read it. I know there is some argument to be made that some things can be important just because they're old. And oftentimes I think in the study of literature where there isn't a whole lot of it from certain areas and things like that, that is oftentimes when we study it just because it's old and it exists. And that's not invalid, but it's not necessarily something I'm going to read. So on the one hand, no, of course you don't need an English degree to talk about popular fiction. You don't even really need one to talk about classics. But if you want to have a fully informed opinion about a book, do you need an English degree? That is the question. A lot of people would honestly say yes. If you want to have a full, true opinion about Shakespeare, you need to have studied Shakespeare on a class. You need to have really gone in depth, and you need to have read lots of Shakespeare, and you need to have studied the history behind Shakespeare. You need to do all that stuff in order to have a valid opinion, or your opinion just isn't valid. There are probably academics out there who would have that perspective, and there are probably some who would say, no, just independent study of Shakespeare and just reading it is enough to have an opinion. But there are others who would say, no, you absolutely have to study it in order to have an opinion on it. Personally, I don't think you need to study something just to have an opinion on it. I mean, there are lots of people out there who have opinions on politics and have never taken a political science class in their life, so it's not ridiculous to assume that somebody who has never taken an English class can have an opinion on Shakespeare. The real question is, can you have a fully formed opinion on Shakespeare? And here's the tricky part where we say, maybe not. Yeah, maybe it is hard to have a fully formed, fully understood opinion on Shakespeare when you haven't ever studied Shakespeare. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have an opinion on Shakespeare and your opinion isn't valid. It just means it won't be informed by the same things of people who have studied it. And honestly, I think that's fine. I think it's okay. But you have to be willing to accept, if you've never studied something and you're talking about it, that you're not going to have that go-to defense where you say, actually, I have an English degree. And that's something Ariel was talking about in her video, that her go-to defense when talking about Catcher in the Rye was that of course she knows what she's talking about because she has an English degree. And so if I talk about Catcher in the Rye and I have an opinion on it, is anybody going to say, well, you have a journalism degree, so your opinion isn't legitimate? I'm gonna hope not, but they might. Somebody could easily look at me and say, well, you didn't study this thing, therefore you clearly don't know what you're talking about. I did take several English classes in my degree, but not on Catcher in the Rye, so maybe I don't understand it. I haven't actually read Catcher in the Rye, so that point is kind of irrelevant, but I'm just using that example because Ariel used it. For example, if I were to make a video about journalism and somebody were to say, you don't know what you're talking about, yeah, it would probably be my instinct too to say, well, I have a journalism degree, so obviously I do. But I think there are instances in which somebody who has really gone out of their way on their own to learn about something, whether it's through watching YouTube videos or just doing research on their own can have a valid opinion on something, even if they didn't study it in a classroom. It's kind of this whole aristocratic thing where we think the degree is really what validates you and validates your opinion on these issues. And if you don't have that and that piece of paper, then basically you didn't really know the things that you think you know. If Ariel makes a bunch of videos about English and you learn those and you absorb the stuff, well, it wasn't in a classroom setting, so therefore it's not legitimate, even if you could argue it's a less conventional, more modern day classroom. But we have rules in our society and people want certain things and they expect certain things. But here's the thing. Back when Pride and Prejudice was first published, people weren't sitting around analyzing it all the time. Obviously, some people probably were, but it was just a just published book then. It was a new thing. History and literature and scholarship hadn't really developed around that book yet, and people still had opinions. People who didn't go to school for English probably read Pride and Prejudice, although I know reading and class are very much intertwined in the past as well as the present. The point is, books don't have scholarship surrounding them immediately. Sometimes they do, but I don't think that happens all the time. And so there are always going to be readers of books who maybe aren't experts in the field and in the subject, and that's totally fine. I don't expect every single person who has an opinion about journalism to have a journalism degree. I just expect them to do the research. And I think if you've done your research on a book and you know what you're talking about, then your opinion is just as valid as somebody who has the English degree and studied it in school. It's a common assumption that studying something academically gives you more legitimacy, but I honestly don't think it does. I think it gives you something that can easily prove legitimacy, but I don't think it's the only thing that can make you legitimate. There are always going to be people who are experts in certain fields, and that's just the life, but it doesn't mean you have to be academically qualified to talk about those things. As I said, if everybody who talked about things ever was academically qualified, maybe the world would be a better place, but we would probably all be in a lot of debt, and it would be really boring because we can't study everything, and that's life. We can only study as much as we can, and there's nothing wrong with taking an interest in something outside of an academic classroom and putting your heart into it and wanting to know more about it, regardless of whether you are an academic and you have a degree in that thing. I think that is pretty much all I have to say on this topic. I know this was a rambly video. I'm not even sure it made any sense, but I really wanted to talk about this. I know I'm somebody who likes classics and things like that, but I'm not an English major, clearly. I actually took several English classes and I've never gone higher than a B. So just because you like classics or you like analyzing books, whatever you enjoy, doesn't mean you need an English degree. It doesn't mean if you don't have an English degree, your opinion is illegitimate. But that's pretty much all for this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on your way out if you're new here. I upload videos generally every Tuesday and Friday, occasional bonus uploads of the week as I please. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social medias, links are all going to be in the description, but in the meantime, I will see you guys next time.